All right, back once again for the Renegade Master. Peak tap 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 power to the people. All right, here we go on the left angle cross of Dominion, the 5-1. I'm going to talk about the 5-1. Let's go to the 5-1 and let's go to the joke. I love the jokes. The 5 is the line of promise. It's all about values. It says confusion over which values and relationships can bring harmony, or focusing on past confusion about values and relationships. But it's about a promise. And the promise is that the mind somehow can penetrate this, can find a solution, and then teach it to the people. That's the most interesting thing. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking with a 5-1 voice here, you know. They like to seduce. So if you want somebody who's going to do a better job educating than the 4-1, because the 4-1 is just going to dump everything at once and say, okay, this is what you have to do, become this. The 5-1 is trickier. The 5-1 seduces you to that. It's just seduction. The seduction starts with very basic things of values: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Male and female allowed to be educated, taught the basics, and introduced the basic concept that can be the foundation and the building block for ultimately education. The other side of this is to understand that the 4-1 only wants to change the consciousness of the tribe in order to get rich. It sees that if the tribe doesn't get educated, doesn't raise its consciousness level, that's going to be destroyed by the tribe in the next valley, and so forth and so on. But the 5-1 is a left angle cross of Dominion. This is a different kind of consciousness raising. It's a seduction, it's a promise. It's the promise that every child hears when they're born. For example, in America, there's a promise. One day you're going to grow up to be George Bush. Well, one day you too can be president. It doesn't mean you will. But then it is very interesting in the way in which we have a shift in the consciousness here. In other words, the pitch is that one day you cannot be simply better educated and a better slave paying better taxes. But your very ability to be educated can liberate you to have intellectual capital that will turn you into a force, a leader, a ruler, yourself. Look at the planets in this line. It's Venus exalted, it's Jupiter in detriment. You've got the maker of the natural law and the enshriner of the true law sitting in this line. In other words, this is all about how the heretic, in this case, it's very heretical. It's heretic comes along and says, all right, what we're going to do is educate you so you can actually take my job and rule the tribe. Now you can then, well, that's a lie. The 45 and the 26 don't go along with that. But the 64, 63 realizes it's true. So it's a blending. It's a promise. You can see what happens if you look at society that have been basically totalitarian or authoritarian. I should say it's easier to see in that way. Who educate the population at a certain point, there's a certain cresting in the educational mean where the whole ability to be authoritarian breaks down. You can only educate them so much, and then you hit that point where the tables turn. And everything about this kind of thinking is, yeah, between now and when the tables turn, we're going to do very well, and they're going to do better. And our tribe is going to be more powerful because this is a tribal consciousness at its deepest, even though it's operating out of the 64 as a thing. Now let's look at this for a moment as duality and think about it very, very clearly. Here it's not about I want somebody that share my consciousness. It is I want somebody who shares my values. It's easier. The consciousness is so difficult to get where you find those that can commune with you at that level as a 64, 63. And remember, because this is not consciousness, it's not focused on that, but it does understand something. It understands that the duality business is very, very difficult and that everything is trying to figure out how to make the best out of it. And for them, the best out of it. Let's educate a set of values. And through the set of values, we can find a common point. We both love Jesus, so we can love each other. We both love dwarfs on the lawn, so we can love each other. Whatever the values are, then the values become the medium that allows for the embrace in the relationship or justification for it, one way or another. This is more than heresy. This is heresy that is backed by the law. And given that the mental plane is where the not self lives, you can see that this has a very deep impact on not self thinking, that shared values make up for shared stupidity. Okay, long live the stupidity. Then we go to the 5-2. If you're 5-2 here, the best you can do is to make a promise to yourself. This whole business about being self motivated, and in fact, in many as you can intuit, that if you're dealing with a 2-5 or 5-2, you really need to pay attention to the personality color and to the transference in that. Because after all, they're self-motivated. So it tells you a lot about where their motivation is coming from, will help you really have a better insight into their nature. But always remember that when you're dealing with the two fives or fives two, that there are resistance, and there are resistance because of the self-motivation, and it tells you something, everything about it's very interesting. It's more difficult to bridge from the 2-4 to the 3-5 than is to bridge from the 1-3 to the 2-4. In other words, you always have this harmonic profile in between. But because the 2-5 and the 5-2s are self motivated, it really means that the way in which this chain operates in this profile chain is that you can see that there are two places where it doesn't run smoothly. In essence, it narrows. If you can see threads moving through the whole hexagram, if I could show it to you literally, what you could see is that there are certain threads that can be stuck at 2-5s and others that actually move through. You see these are the threads that are going to be stuck at 5-2s and not move any further. So there's between the 5-1 and the 6-2, there's a kind of a barrier of sorts. I work with profile, the more I realize that there's more specific lack of consistent flow between what it is to be a 5-1 and what is for me to meet a 6-2. It's much easier for me to meet a 4-6. I don't have that problem with the 4-1s. The 4-1 is a consistent bridge, and I can go from a 5-1 to the 4-6 much easier than I can go from my 5-1 to the 6-2. And it's because of the 5-2s are in the middle. They slow it down. It's like a traffic jam in the city. They are flowing along, and all of a sudden you get in this traffic jam, and some cars are getting through. They're in a carpool lane. Some cars are getting through and will get to the other side. So what I'm actually saying is that there's much information moving in those bridging points, something that others can investigate down the road, but something that's significant. So they work on their own values. They're very paranoid in that sense about the value of others. And yet at the same time, like any vibe, they're heretical. They can establish values. If they do manage to motivate themselves, they can have an impact. But again, 5-2s and 2-5s, you rarely see them concretizing their profiles. It's normally behind closed doors because they're a second line profile, of course, and they are not here to share all that stuff with everybody else.